Breaking news out of Cleveland. The Browns are reportedly preparing to trade Myles Garrett, and insiders say it's all part of a desperate push to finally start Shedeur Sanders before the Jets game. That's right. One of the NFL's top defensive superstars could be gone, all to give Deion's son the keys to the offense.
Money makes no sense. They're not going to do the deal this year, but in a year or two, stay tuned, Zeno. Mike Hawk Jr. Are the Browns seriously considering trading Myles Garrett? Hashtag Browns. I don't think they are. But ESPN put out reports today, Jeremy Fowler specifically, saying that this was on the table, saying that he would not be surprised if the Browns actually moved Garrett before the deadline, specifically because of the emotions. And he said, I don't think it's out of the question that the Browns could trade Garrett, even this week, if he really wanted out. If someone came offering the Browns, say, 2 first-round picks, and Garrett, who has a no-trade clause and could therefore veto a deal, really wanted out, it would probably be worth considering. Let's say, totally hypothetical, like the Cowboys or the Los Angeles Rams offered both of the 2026 first-round picks they have as a result of prior trades. Cleveland would be looking at the...
ESPN just dropped a bomb that has the entire NFL world shaking right now. Myles Garrett, the generational defensive end, the guy we all thought was untouchable, might actually be on the trading block, and the Browns could be stockpiling picks to build around Shedeur Sanders instead of Dillon Gabriel. Yeah, you heard that right. While Dillon's out here completing 59% of his passes on dink-and-dunk throws that would make a high school JV coach cry, the front office is reportedly considering the unthinkable, dealing away the face of the franchise to secure the future. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN said he wouldn't be surprised if the Browns moved Garrett this week if someone offered 2 first-rounders. And with Shedeur sitting on the bench watching this dumpster fire unfold, the timing couldn't be more suspicious. Is Cleveland really about to blow it all up and hand the keys to Deion's son? Or is this just smoke and mirrors to light a fire under a roster that's playing like they've already checked out for the season?
This usually happens when you start a new quarterback or have a new play caller or something like that. So I think it'd be a little better. And Stefanski's plays, he loves play action. He loves 2 tight ends. He loves things that take long to develop. And when we don't have that, it's a lot of short plays that he's also calling and that Gabriel's throwing. I think Reese would bring a little bit more juice, take a little bit more deep shots. They said they want to get Jerry Jeudy more involved too. Well, Judy's got to catch the ball, but he is our number 1. Catch him on a post. Go a little deeper. I'm down. Tim Green. The reason Dillon keeps starting is because him and Kevin Stefanski share the same agent that offers them incentives. That's why Shedeur isn't starting. Tim, I brought this up in my video on Wednesday. Go watch that if you guys haven't yet, but there's truth to that. Coaches under CAA, the agency that reps Kevin Stefanski, has a rep that reps Andrew Berry, also are agents of Dan Lanning, Brant Venables, and Gus Malzahn. 3 of these coaches, Dillon Gabriel played for. It's no coincidence, folks. The CAA influence in Cleveland is similar to Athletes First in Chicago. Jimmy Sexton, who declined to comment for the story, has represented the past...
Look, I'm going to be real with you right now. When I woke up this morning and saw Jeremy Fowler's report from ESPN, my first thought was, no way. My second thought was, wait, actually, maybe? Because here's the thing about the Cleveland Browns in 2025. Nothing makes sense anymore.
Just like we probably would if we got another coordinator who was bad as a head coach. However, I do like the fact of thinking offensive-minded, and if we can go out, get a guy who's offensive-minded, I might be a little bit more in on that, and we keep Jim Schwartz run the defense. Also, bring in John Gruden. That's a name I'm starting to see. He grew up a Cleveland guy. Bring me John Gruden. Cool guy. What's going on, cool guy? Given how the season's going, do you think the Browns may genuinely stick with Stefanski once the season's over? Well, I'll tell you what, cool guy. A lot of people calling for this firing to happen mid-season. That seems unlikely. Jimmy Haslam said Stefanski's done a good job. I don't know what Haslam's watched, but he did make the point that he was dealt a bad hand with the Watson deal. And they're going to ride out Stefanski for the rest of the year. If the season is awful, I would not be on board with bringing back Kevin Stefanski in 2026. If the rest of this year looks like the first half of this year, with our easier schedule in the back half, fire the head coach. Haslam doesn't seem like he's budging on that yet. Barry neither. There's a lot of miscommunication between the owner, the GM, and the coach. So they're all on different pages. But I wouldn't.
We're living in a simulation where up is down, left is right, and apparently trading your best player to start over with a quarterback who hasn't taken a single snap with the first team is somehow on the table. Let's break down what Fowler actually said, because this isn't some random Twitter rumor from a burner account with 47 followers. This is ESPN's insider specifically saying he would not be surprised if the Browns moved Myles Garrett before the trade deadline. Not next year, not in the offseason, this week. The trade deadline is right around the corner. And according to Fowler, if Garrett, who has a no-trade clause, by the way, if he really wanted out and some team came calling with 2 first-round picks, the Browns would probably have to consider it. Now here's where it gets absolutely wild. Fowler threw out a hypothetical that's so specific, it almost feels like he's been talking to people behind the scenes. He said, imagine if the Cowboys or the Rams, 2 teams that have extra first-rounders from previous trades, imagine if they offered both of their 2026 first-round picks. Suddenly, the Browns aren't just getting 2 firsts. They're looking at the possibility of having 4 first-round selections in the 2026 draft. 4. Let that sink in for a second. You know what you can do with 4 first-round picks? You can completely rebuild an entire roster in one draft. You can control the entire first round and come out with whichever quarterback you want. Whether that's a college guy or plot twist, you run it back with Shedeur Sanders after giving him an actual offseason as QB1. You can surround that quarterback with offensive tackles, elite wide receivers, whatever you need. It's basically a franchise reset button, and for a team that's sitting here with the worst quarterback play in the NFL and a roster that's clearly not competing for anything this year, that reset button is looking mighty tempting. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Myles Garrett isn't just good. He's not just a Pro Bowler. He's a generational player, the kind of guy who comes along once every 10 years. You don't just trade those guys away because you're having a bad season. And that's exactly what Adam Schefter said when he basically laughed off the entire idea. Schefter came out and said, there's a better chance he wins the lottery than the Browns actually deal Garrett. That's how unlikely this is supposed to be. So why is it even being talked about? Here's my theory, and stay with me on this because it connects all the dots. The Browns are in a legitimacy crisis right now. The offense is historically bad. I'm talking worst in the league type numbers. Dillon Gabriel has a 47.6 passing grade from Pro Football Focus. That's dead last among all starting quarterbacks. Dead last. His completion percentage is 59.9%, 4th worst in the league. But here's the kicker. His yards per attempt is 4.9, which is the worst. So he's throwing shorter passes than anyone in the NFL and still can't complete them at a decent rate. That's not just bad quarterbacking. That's broken quarterbacking. And who's sitting on the bench watching all this? Shedeur Sanders. The guy everyone thought the Browns should have drafted in the first place. The guy who Deion Sanders raised to be an NFL quarterback from birth. The guy who's been sitting there through 4 weeks of absolute misery without even getting reps with the first-team offense. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel is out there throwing hospital balls and taking safeties in the end zone against the Patriots. Now, here's where it gets spicy. There's been talk, and this came up in the source material, about the agency connections. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Barry are both repped by CAA. You know who else has ties to CAA? Dillon Gabriel's college coaches. Dan Lanning, Brent Venables, Gus Malzahn, all three coaches Gabriel played for, are connected to the same agency network. It's the same kind of situation that happened in Chicago with Athletes First, where agents have influence over personnel decisions. Is it a smoking gun? No. But it's definitely suspicious when you're watching a quarterback who literally cannot complete basic throws continue to start week after week, while Shedeur doesn't even get a chance to compete. Let me paint you a picture of what could be happening behind closed doors in Berea right now. The front office knows they messed up. They reached on Dillon Gabriel because of connections and relationships, and now they're stuck. Shedeur is sitting there as insurance. But if they start him and he balls out, it makes Stefanski and Barry look incompetent for not starting him from day one. So they're in this impossible position where they either ride with Dillon and hope things magically get better, or they admit defeat and give Shedeur the keys. But what if there's a third option? What if they blow the whole thing up? That's where the Myles Garrett trade actually starts to make sense. Not from a football perspective, but from a political one. If you're Andrew Barry and you know you're on the hot seat, what do? You can't fire Stefanski mid-season because Jimmy Haslam already came out and said he's done a good job, which is insane, but that's where we're at. You can't bench Dillon immediately because it makes you look like you wasted a pick. But what you can do is start planning for 2026. Trading Garrett would send a message. We're rebuilding. It would give Barry the ammunition to say, look, we're getting 4 first-round picks. We're building around Shedeur. This is a total reset. It takes the pressure off this season and puts all the attention on next year. It's a political move disguised as a football move. Now let's talk about Garrett's perspective for a second, because that no-trade clause means he has all the power here. If you're Myles Garrett, are you really trying to waste your prime years on a team that can't score 10 points a game? You're playing at a Defensive Player of the Year level, and your offense is making you irrelevant every single week. The defense is actually playing lights out. They're one of the best units in the league, but it doesn't matter because Dillon Gabriel couldn't score on a Pop Warner defense right now. If the Cowboys call and say, we'll give you 2 firsts, we're Super Bowl contenders, and you'll get to play with Micah Parsons. Why would Garrett say no? If the Rams call and say, come play with Aaron Donald's replacement, we're competing for the NFC West, and you'll get national TV games every week. Why would he turn that down? The man is 29 years old. He's in his prime. He doesn't have time to wait for the Browns to figure out their quarterback situation. And here's the part that nobody's talking about. What if Garrett wants out, but he's not saying it publicly because he doesn't want to be the bad guy? What if behind closed doors, his agent has already told the Browns, if the right offer comes in, let's talk? That would explain why Fowler felt comfortable enough to put this report out. He's got sources. He's hearing whispers. This isn't coming from nowhere. Let's say the Rams pull the trigger. They send their 2 2026 first-rounders to Cleveland. The Browns now have their own first, which will be top 5. The Deshaun Watson compensation pick they're going to get when they inevitably cut him, and 2 more firsts from the Rams. That's 4 picks in the top 32. You can build an entire offense around Shedeur Sanders in one draft. Left tackle, right tackle, elite X-receiver, a tight end. Everything he needs to succeed. All in one haul. But here's the flip side. And this is why I'm torn on this whole thing. Defense wins championships. We've seen it our entire lives. The Browns' defense is already elite. Jim Schwartz has this unit playing like the 2000 Ravens. If you add even a mediocre offense to this defense, the Browns are a playoff team. Why would you tear that down? This is where Shedeur comes in. Because if you believe, and I mean truly believe, that Shedeur Sanders can come in and be a franchise quarterback, you don't need Myles Garrett. You need offensive weapons. You need protection. You need receivers who can actually catch the ball because right now Jerry Jeudy is ranked 98th out of 98 receivers by ESPN. David Bell was 97th. That's not a typo. The two starting wide receivers for the Cleveland Browns are literally the two worst receivers in football according to ESPN's metrics. So maybe the logic is, trade Garrett for picks. Flip those picks into offensive talent and let Shedeur cook. Build around the quarterback instead of trying to win with defense and special teams like it's 1985. It's a gamble, sure, but what's the alternative? Keep running Dillon Gabriel out there until the fan base completely revolts? Here's what I think is going to happen, and you can hold me to this. The Browns are not trading Myles Garrett this week. Adam Schefter is right. It's not happening before the deadline. But I do think this report from Fowler is a trial balloon. I think the Browns leaked this to gauge reaction from fans, from Garrett's camp, and from other teams around the league. They want to see if there's real interest. They want to see what the market value would be. And after the trade deadline passes, I think the Browns are going to make a move at quarterback. Not because they want to, but because they'll have no choice. If Dillon Gabriel goes out against the Jets coming off the bye week and lays another egg, the pressure to start Shedeur is going to be unbearable. The Jets' defense isn't exactly the '85 Bears. If you can't move the ball against them, you might as well pack it in for the season. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room that makes this whole situation even crazier. Shedeur Sanders. Because whether the Browns trade Garrett or not, the Shedeur question is going to define the rest of this season and potentially the entire future of the franchise. I was high on Shedeur in the draft. I said it at the time, and I'll say it again. This kid has franchise quarterback written all over him. Yeah, his dad is Shedeur Sanders, and there's all the Coach Prime circus energy that comes with that. But strip away the noise, and what do you have? You have a quarterback who played in the SEC and Big 12, faced elite competition, showed elite processing speed, and has the arm talent to make every throw. The only real knock on him was size, and even that's overblown. He's 6'2", same height as Drew Brees. But the Browns passed on him. They took Dillon Gabriel instead, and we all know why. The agency connections. The comfort level with Oregon quarterbacks after seeing Bo Nix have some success. The idea that Gabriel was more pro-ready because he played in a complex system. All of it sounded good on paper, and all of it has been exposed as complete nonsense through 4 weeks of football. Here's what kills me about this situation. We haven't even seen Shedeur get reps with the first team. Not in practice, not in preseason, nothing. He's been relegated to scout team duty while Dillon Gabriel runs the ones and proceeds to put up historically bad numbers. It's like the Browns are so committed to this mistake that they refuse to even consider the alternative. And you know what that tells me? It tells me the front office is terrified. They're terrified of being wrong. They're terrified of admitting they whiffed on a draft pick. They're terrified of what it would look like if Shedeur came in and immediately looked better than Dillon. Because then every single person in that building would have to answer the question, why didn't we start him from day one? Let's play this out. Say the Browns don't trade Garrett this week. Say they run Dillon out against the Jets after the bye week, which is what reports are suggesting they'll do. The Jets' defense is not good, folks. They're giving up big plays left and right. If there was ever a get-right game for a struggling offense, this is it. But what if Dillon goes out there and throws 2 more interceptions? What if he takes another safety? What if the offense scores 10 points again and loses to a Jets team that's in full tank mode? At what point does Kevin Stefanski have no choice but to make a change? And here's where it gets interesting from a timeline perspective. If the Browns bench Dillon after the Jets game, Shedeur would get his first start in Week 11. That gives him 7 games to show what he can do. 7 games to either prove he's the future or prove that maybe Dillon wasn't the problem after all. That's a decent sample size, enough to make a decision about whether you need to draft another quarterback in 2026. But here's the twist that nobody's talking about. What if Shedeur balls out? What if he comes in and immediately the offense looks competent? What if Jerry Jeudy suddenly looks like a receiver again because he's getting catchable balls? What if Deshaun Watson's massive contract doesn't even matter anymore? Because you've got a rookie quarterback on a cheap deal who can actually move the offense. If that happens, and I'm not saying it will happen, but if it does, then trading Myles Garrett for 4 first-round picks starts to make a whole lot more sense. Because now you're not just stockpiling picks to find a quarterback. You've already got the quarterback. Now, you're stockpiling picks to build a championship roster around him. Imagine this scenario. Shedeur takes over in Week 11 and goes 5-2 down the stretch. The offense isn't amazing, but it's functional. He's completing 65% of his passes, throwing 12 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, managing the game, making the right reads. The Browns finish 7-10, which sounds bad, but would actually be pretty impressive considering the hole they dug themselves in the first half. Now it's the 2026 offseason. You've got 4 first-round picks. Shedeur is your quarterback. The defense is still elite because Jim Schwartz is a wizard. What do? You surround Shedeur with weapons. You draft the best left tackle in the country at pick 5. You take the best wide receiver at pick 15. You grab an elite edge rusher to replace Garrett at pick 22. You take another offensive tackle or a tight end at pick 28. Boom! You've rebuilt the entire offense in one draft while keeping the defense intact. That's the dream scenario, and honestly, it's not that far-fetched. But it only works if Shedeur is the guy. If he's not, if he comes in and looks just as lost as Dylan, then this whole master plan falls apart, and the Browns are back to square one again. Let me throw one more thing out there that's been bouncing around in my head. Kevin Stefanski said during the bye week that they're looking at all things, including play calling. That's coach speak for, I know we suck, and I'm trying to figure out what to do about it. But what if the play calling isn't the problem? What if the problem is that Dillon Gabriel can't execute even the simplest plays in Stefanski's system? Tommy Rees is sitting right there as the offensive coordinator. He's not calling plays right now, Stefanski is. But Rees worked with Shedeur at Colorado. He knows Shedeur's game inside and out. What if the plan is to hand play-calling duties to Rees at the same time they make the quarterback switch? That would give Shedeur a coordinator who actually believes in him and a system designed around his strengths instead of trying to force him into Stefanski's rigid scheme. That's a lot of what-ifs, I know. But this is where we're at with the Browns right now. Everything is speculation because the front office refuses to be transparent about what's actually happening behind closed doors. Are they seriously considering trading Garrett? Maybe. Will they actually do it? Probably not this week. Is Shedeur going to start before the season's over? I'd bet on it, especially if Dylan lays another egg against the Jets. Here's my final take on all this, and then we'll wrap it up. The Myles Garrett trade talk is real, but it's more about 2026 than 2025. The Browns know they're not competing this year. They know the roster needs a massive overhaul. And they know that at some point, probably sooner rather than later, Shedeur Sanders is going to have to play. What Jeremy Fowler reported isn't happening this week, but it's absolutely happening in the offseason. Book it. If the Browns finish with 5 or 6 wins, if the offense continues to be a disaster, if Shedeur shows flashes in limited action, the front office is going to seriously consider blowing it up and starting over. And that means everything is on the table, including trading the best defensive player this franchise has had in decades. As a Browns fan, I don't know how to feel about any of this. Part of me wants to keep Garrett and build around him because he's that good. But another part of me looks at the offense and thinks, we need everything. We need tackles, receivers, a quarterback who can actually throw the ball, play callers who aren't stuck in 1995. Maybe 4 first-round picks is what it takes to fix all of that. So, where does that leave us? The Browns are at a crossroads, and every decision they make over the next few weeks is going to define this franchise for the next 5 years. Do they ride with Dillon Gabriel and hope things click? Do they start Shedeur and see what they really have? Do they trade Myles Garrett for a haul of picks and rebuild from scratch? All I know is this. If the Browns lose to the Jets coming off a bye week, with a rested roster and extra time to prepare, there's going to be hell to pay. The fans are already at their breaking point. The players are clearly frustrated. And Shedeur Sanders is sitting there watching all of this unfold, waiting for his shot. One way or another, change is coming to Cleveland. The question is whether it happens now or in the off-season, and whether Myles Garrett is still going to be here when it does. What do you think, Browns fans? Should they trade Garrett for 4 firsts? Should Shedeur start against the Jets? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're going to be covering every single twist and turn of this wild season. This is history unfolding in real time, and you don't want to miss a second of it. Let's get it. Let's get it.